Welcome back to Wall again, and this week we have Eric back for another Pink Floyd review. How's it going, Eric?
What's the story, Rob? How are you doing, man?
All good now, all good. Did you enjoy listening to this album this week, Adam Hartmother?
You know what? It's certainly a hidden gem. There's some really good stuff on there, but there's also some crap on it as well.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, so it was released in 1970. It was the fifth studio album by the band, and it went gold in the UK and the USA. So quite a successful album for them. Went to number one in the UK, and it was the label Harvest it was released through, but
Yeah,
recorded at Abbey Road Studios as well. So they've been very accustomed to Abbey Road in this part of their
yeah,
career.
yeah. They have been. Yeah, they've been in there for a lot, and you find it surprising, like some of the even the second album, the first and second album were Abbey Road's affiliated, particularly the second album. Abbey Roads is known as having fantastic sound. I mean, the audio on the second album is not all good, but sure we'll get to that later on. When we're doing Sorcerer Full of Secrets, but this is actually no better. I mean, it's not the polished Abbey Road we know from like Dark Side of the Moon or any even the Beatles albums.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It's definitely it's more raw.
Yeah,
So
it certainly is.
yeah, so this one it's only got five tracks on it, but
Yeah,
again, the first track is quite a long track.
yeah,
Oh, you have the inside sleeve. That's very cool.
yeah.
That's very cool. Yeah.
It's cool when you see the picture, like the artwork all laid out.
Yeah, this
Actually, I read. So this is another Storm Ferguson. And yeah, Hypnosis done the album art from this. So up until now, the band in the '70s they'd been associated with the whole psychedelic scene,
yeah.
and they've been associated with kind of like space rock, psychedelia, particularly in like the Source of Full of Secret stuff. And I was reading that Storm Ferguson, he wanted to get something that was a million miles away from space rock, so
All right.
he went out to some field where they were jamming or where they were recording, and he took a picture of one of these Frisian cows. To be
Cool.
honest, I associate cows with space because of South
Okay.
Park.
Fair enough. Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a striking cover. Like
Yeah,
it's that's you have the gatefold on vinyl. That's the gatefold on a CD. So it's the same on this side. When
yeah.
you go to the inside sleeve on CD, it's just a
Ah, yeah.
picture of the band
Picture of the band, yeah.
with their hands over their faces.
And the original, actually, the only pictures of the band was the first album, and then Umaguma. I think that was the last kind of pictures of the bands on the artwork that
Okay.
they deviate from. Yeah, yeah. But anyways, yeah. What did you think of the listen? What did you think of the tracks on this album?
I really enjoyed this album.
Yeah,
Well, look, I enjoyed parts of it. I think the opening track, Atom Heart Mother, which is split
yeah,
up into six different chapters, I think it's
yeah,
amazing. It's a
yeah.
fantastic listen, and
I agree with you. I agree with you.
you're
I love
waiting for
that.
that. There's a part. It's very keyboard driven or organ driven,
Yeah,
and you're waiting for that keyboard riff, that progression to come back in when it
yeah.
gets halfway through. And that's for me, that's the sign of a great song, especially
Mm,
when you're talking about a full side of vinyl, which is around the 21-minute mark, I think.
yeah,
And it's long, so you have to break it up with chapters, but then you
mm,
have to have some familiarity throughout the piece of music. And they've
yeah.
nailed it on this one. Absolutely nailed it. Love that song.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a deadly song. I can hear elements of echoes in there.
Yeah.
There's a funk to do like a funk jam in it, and it's
Yeah.
almost like another funk jam to do in echoes. I think it's really cool. But then there's also like an operatic section where there's like loads of singers and all. It just sounds. I think it's class. It's really different. I remember listening to it years ago and going, "This was different." I really liked it. But you can
Yeah.
hear Pink Floyd developing that sounds that they're bringing into echoes and into Dark Side of the Moon very early on.
Yeah.
And the story goes, they got like a full whatever brass section in and an orchestra to sing on the live recording of that. And apparently the brass section, like they were unpolished, like they didn't know what they were doing on the day. I think there's a
Okay.
famous like interview. I think Richard Wright done actually, and he's talking about that. And then they kind of go into it a little bit as well in the audiobook, which I was going to recommend. Actually, it's called Inside Out. I'll show you guys a screenshot of it. And the whole story is included in it. I think it's like chapter 20 or something like that. That's there.
Wow.
It's actually on Spotify, and it's a good listen. It's called Inside Out. It's narrated by Nick Mason, the drummer in Pink Floyd.
Very
So,
good.
and it's a very quick listen. It's only 3 hours long. You'll do it in like one
I
or
must
two.
look out for that. Yeah, it's on
Yeah,
Spotify.
yeah. So it's pretty good. But they talk about this album in it. They talk about every album in it, but this album in particular is around a time where they're doing a lot of touring, and then they're gearing up to record a soundtrack to a
Yeah.
movie, which we'll talk about next week, which is more.
Hmm.
But around that, they got a whole brass section. It was the first time they brought kind of external musicians into the band to help them record it, and they all took the piss apparently. They weren't rehearsed. They were messing in the studio and all, and it's a very good story actually. So I'll let you guys check that out now.
Brilliant. Yeah. No samples in these days. Like if you wanted an orchestra, you had to physically record them.
Yes, exactly. You brought everybody into the studio, and you were paying for studio time, and none of them were rehearsed, right? And then they're like the record label were spending money on them lads being in the studio, so it was a massive like, what he's doing, you know.
Yeah. So was this was probably their biggest album to date, was it?
I think like obviously before the whole metal and Dark Side of the Moon, um, I think before that, yeah. I mean, if you think about the albums that came before, so Pink Floyd, obviously fronted by Sid Barrett,
Yeah.
Sid Barrett's departure of the band, and then they had done Sorcerer for the Secrets, where they kind of didn't know where they're one foot in like one door with kind of psychedelia, and then trying to find their own kind of tale of music to tell, and then they done a soundtrack as a part of the project, and then Gumma was their first double album release, which was not good at all. To be honest, it's not a great album. We'll get to that next week. And then yeah, I suppose this was their kind of big departure away from that psychedelic space rock that they were associated with, and started to kind of get more of a, I would say more like a folky sound. Now
Yeah.
the song Atom Heart Mother Sweet, it's like the bluesy rock stuff that you hear in like metal on
Mhm.
Echoes and that. But even like as we get to the other tracks, like if it's a song Waterstone, it's a nice kind of, I think it's really melancholic kind of style song, but it's
Yeah.
very folky. It's very folky sounding in terms of what they're singing, and then even Summer of '68, Fat Old Son, they're all very folky kind of based. They remind me of like Simon and Garfunkel or something like that. I don't know what it
I
is,
really
but
like Fat Old Son.
yeah, Fat Old Son, yeah.
Great, great
Actually,
track.
yeah, great song. It's actually one of the first songs David Gilmour had written, and
Okay.
professional songs. And I wanted to bring this in as well. Now it's David Gilmour live in Pompeii, but the reason why I want to show it is because that song Fat Old Son, he has it on all of his gigs that he's ever done. He always plays Fat Old Son, and that's where Fat Old Son is from. So it goes right back to those days. So I'd say
Yeah.
that song for him obviously means something. It's about him, like his first, first song as a singer, fronting the band, playing guitar and that without Sid Barrett, without Roger Waters or whatever. So it's a nice one to mention. But he's even doing it on his latest tour that he's done there. A few weeks ago, he's still on tour. I think in the US now. He's still playing Fat Old Son on that. So it's obviously a song that stuck around for him.
Brilliant. Brilliant. It must mean a lot to him. And yeah, it's great to see him playing
It's a
something
good
from
song. Yeah, it's
such
a
an
good song.
early album in their career.
Yeah.
So yeah, overall, what would you give this album on a rating at 1 to 10?
Yeah, this to me now, obviously it's not as polished and as good as like your Dark Side of the Moon or Wish You Were Here, but
Hmm.
I do like the tracks. I like the first side, the Atom Heart Mother Sweet, and then I like If. I like Summer of '68. I think that's Richard Brice singing that song as well, isn't it?
Okay, I'm not sure
Yeah,
actually.
that's Richard Brice singing that song, and then Fat Son, which is Gilmore. I'm not a
Yeah,
fan of the last song. I think it's rubbish.
it's
It's
absolute rubbish.
Yeah, it's just some lad like there's a few bits of guitar in it, and then there's some lad like
Uh,
sticking on the kettle and cooking toast, and I don't know what the hell they're doing. It doesn't
heavily
look like
heavily
an act or
influenced
something.
by heavily influenced by chemicals. I'd say that song. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I give this probably a 6.5, maybe a 7 out of 10. On
Yeah.
the half of the first half of the album, I think is very
Yeah.
strong. And then some of the songs, they're the kind of folky songs that they do are decent enough tracks.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of somewhere between 5 and 6 for me. Say
Yeah,
5.5. I think like Adam Hart Mother is a great song, and Fat Old Son is very good. But I think the other stuff in there, I know you were saying If and Summer of '68 you like, but for
yeah,
me, it's just not. It's not there. It's not at the standard. It's okay.
yeah.
It's not a bad album, but again, like if you're to compare it with the other work that Pink Floyd have, it just doesn't stand up to that.
Absolutely. To me, it's a very different band back then. Like
Oh,
it's
for
Pink
sure, yeah.
Floyd
They're
really
finding their
switched
feet.
eras in their music. Even with the Sid Barrett days, completely polar opposite bands to what you're listening to on Division Bell. Completely different. And then like this stuff in the middle, it's completely different to what you hear on like Dark Side of the Moon or Metal or
Yeah.
it's such a depart, but you can hear them developing the sound that they're going to be, which is it's interesting to listen to.
Yeah, there's an evolution in the sound through the albums,
Yeah,
and it's a story, and you can see it
yeah,
developing. So
yeah,
yeah, it's fantastic that they have that story, and this is a very important part of that story. So
yeah,
yeah, like I won't diss it too much, but I just think there's better albums, there's worse albums as well.
yeah.
So look, on that note, we might leave it there for this week. So look, let us know at home what you think of this album, Adam Hart Mother by Pink Floyd. Do you think it's a good album, it's a gem, or do you think it's no good, or maybe it's just half and half and it sits in the middle like I do, like a 5.5? And please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, all that good stuff helps out the channel, and we greatly appreciate it. And we'll chat to you next week. So bye for now.